You know why they made the Yom Kippur, because this corresponded to had a pagan holiday this time. So they wanted to override the pagan holiday. They decided it's going to be on this day.
I didn't not geweldig.
Yeah.
No, that's the historic. That's where it comes from. Could be.
That's so I say a pope decided we're going to make it today.
Look at that. The power of the Pope. Okay, so let's have a look over here. The Gemara told us, the Mishnah told us that if you said Hayoim, I will not drink wine, the nether expires in the evening. If you said Yoim Echad or Yoim, then it's a 24-hour day. The Gemara now thinks of what about a hybrid? Ibayilu Omar Konim Yayin Shanitoyim Yoim. So you didn't say Yoim Echad, you just said the word Yoim. My Dine, is it Kayoim? And it'll expire in the evening.
What daf are you on?
I'm on daf Samach Amud Beis, even though we already got on to Samach Aleph Amud Aleph, but I wanted to go back to the Shaila that today's Gemara is going to be discussing. So Yiboilu, Omer Kanim Yain Shnitoim Yoim, Ma'adinei Kayoim Oy Kayoim Echad. So Tashmami Masnisen, we tried to bring the right from our Mishnah, where in the Reish it says Kanim Yain Shnitoim Hayoim Ein Oser Ela Ad Shetechshach, which would tell us that if you said Hayoim, Hayoim, if you just said Yoim, it would mean Kayam Echadami, and it would be 24 hours. Ema Seifa, the Gemara says you can make exactly the opposite diuk from the Seifa. Amar Yom Echad Oser Miyoim Liyoim. Hayoim Kayam Dami. So since we have contradictory diukim from the Reisha to the Seifa, Elamei Ha Leka Lamashmanina. You can't bring any raya from our Mishnah. So now the Gemara is reaching out to bring another raya. Amar Bashi Toshma. Kainim Yain She'eni Toyim Shah. What if someone says, I will not drink wine this year? And it's Abra Hashana. And the Shana became Muberis. So the Ran tells us this could have been a nether that someone even made in Tishrei. Someone could have made this nether all the way in Tishrei. Or actually, if we're going to say Nisan is Rosh Hashanah, it'll be easier that way. Someone could have made this nether in Nisan. And he could have gotten a full 12 months in his nether. But now there's a 13th month that was added, unbeknownst to him at the time of the nether, they were going to double up on Adar at the end of the year. The halach is, nevertheless, Osir Ba will be Bura. Not only are the 12 months of Osir, the 13th month, the Adar, is also Osir, it's included in the Hashana. Hey, Chidam, let's analyze more deeply exactly what the case is. If it's exactly what the Brisa tells us, that he said Hashana, and because that includes even the 13th month of Adar, Lama Lila Memra, why is that a Chiddush? He said Hashana. Ella, it must be telling us a Chiddush. Lav, the Omar Shana. Maybe he didn't say Hashana. Maybe the Bryce is telling you a Chiddush, even if you said Shana without the Hay, and even then, it means the full year. So you should have a Raya Al Mashana is Kiashana Dami, and by extension, we can also argue the Yoim Nami Kayoim Dine. So now you have a Raya. No, it's not a Raya. Loilam Damar Hashana. Let's say the Bryce says what it means what it says. It said Hashana. Umau de Tema. So what's the Chiddush? I said Hashana, so of course you should include the full year until next Chodesh Nisan. Umau de Tema Halach Acharoi Hashanim. You might say you go Basar Roiv years, which are only 12 months, that do not include Ibur, Kamash Malam. So let's see what the Ran says. The less ban Ibur, most years don't have an Ibur. The name of the Avagav Damar Hashana, Loy Litzer Ela Karev Shana. Most years only have 12 months, Kamash Malam, that is 13 months. So the Mefarshim asks, why Taka don't you go Basar Roiv? Roiv Shanim are 12 months. So why don't you follow the Roiv? So there's different mahalchim in this. There are those who learn is that, yeah, technically Roiv years only have 12 months, but Roiv people that say a year mean to include 13 months. So that's why you don't go bust the Roiv of years. Okay. Let me see what the Gemara says over here. Okay. There's a billion Ashas over here. Here it is. The Ran says, you just learned this Ran. I'm sorry, I wanted to learn the first Ran, the Ran that goes over to the top. So let's learn the Ran at the bottom, because it's a fascinating group of behavior here. Passer Bo Ibura, nearly the Rabusa, the mitzvah beibura lenoider mitchilas hashon nisrich. It's even if you made your neder in Nisan, so you already have a full 12 months before they added that extra adder. You might have thought when someone says Hashana, he means max out at 12 months. He's even usher in 13 months. Now here's the punchline. The Ibn Neider, if it was speaking where he made it neder in Rosh Shvat, where there's either going to be a total of 2 months, Shvat and Adar, in his nether, or maybe a third month, Shita da Hashana ad Rosh Hashanah mash. For sure, then Hashana means at Rosh Hashanah. The whole shaila here, if you start already have a full 12 months, but the Ran says it's Pashit Hashana means up until Rosh Hashanah. So Rabbi Kiva is Mitzayin a redak in Yirmiyahu, Chav Ches Yud Zayin, and it's a fascinating story over there that Rabbi Kiva is suggesting us we look it up. And the talking over there about the Navi Sheker, Yirmiyahu was telling Klal Yisrael, you better do tshuva because we're going to have a churban. And the Navi Sheker were telling the Yidden what they wanted to hear. Don't worry, it's going to be good. I'll take care of Melech Bavel. So there was a Navi, I think his name was Chananya, but who was one of the Navi Sheker. And the Navi Emes came and told him, because you're doing this, you are going to die Hashana. You're going to die this year. But when you look at the Psukim, he was buried the next year. His death was the next year. So the Shaila is, if Hashana means this year, and the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, B'Nevuah, you're going to die Hashana, you see he didn't die that year. So the Radak says, they were such a Pikorsim, he died on the Erev Rosh Hashanah. But he left in his tzava to hide his body until after Rosh Hashanah, so he can prove the Nevuah wrong. That's what a low life he was. So that's the story of Hashanah. That's the Kivek is Mitzayim of the Radak. Okay, so to more weiter. Iboilu. Amar Yayim. A week, a day, a year. What of Boivil? Well, before I go weiter, I should really learn just the last one, L'ina Locha. Well, L'ina Locha, keeping the Bain Lo Yevshita, we don't know what Yoy means. Naktinan L'chumra. Therefore, we have to be machmer to say that it means 24 hours. Okay, now we have the new trial. You said Yovel. So the year 50, which is the year of Yovel, Shnas Chamishim, Kilifnei Chamishim, is that lumped together with the 49 years that preceded the Yovel? Oy Kila Acher Chamishim. Or is the 50 years part of the new cycle? Tashma. So we're going to bring a riot because there's actually a machloikis how the 50th year works. So let's just quickly see around. He didn't really say exactly this word, yovel, because we discussed yoim, we just discussed the shayla of yoim, and the Gemara didn't have a riot. So even though if she bayin l'il, ki yomer yovel, ki yovel echadine. We already said that when you say yovel, you have to go to chomer, and you would have to say it means a full 50 years. And this whole shiloh will be irrelevant. The shiloh is only relevant if he said, I'm prohibiting myself to drink wine for this yovel that I'm currently in. He said, I'd like to be usher to drink wine for this yovel. The Amoyer asking the shiloh wasn't very accurate in the lashon that it suggested. Why? Because mishum the ikar bayin lesa ella ishnas chamishim klefnei chamishim she'ene klal lechesh bin yovel haba. The Gemara's question is not about how to understand this language. The Gemara's question really is just about what is the status of the yovel year? Is it the 50th year of the earlier cycle, or is it the first year of the new cycle? So again, ella ishnas chamishim klefnei chamishim she'ene klal. It's not in the count of the next 50, which means the next Shemitah, you don't count Yovel as year 1. Yovel is year 0. And then you count 7 years, and the 7th year post Yovel would be the next Shemitah. Hilchach Neider, someone who's making a neder, the Koi Be'emtze Yovel, who's in the middle of a 50-year period. The Omar Yovel Zeh Mitzvah. that 50 would be usher because that 50 is the last year of the earlier Yovel cycle, because the next Shemitah cycle you start with year 1 after year 50. That's one approach. Or is in fact, it's like the year 50 is also year 1. So and if that's the case, if year 1, well then it should be part of the next set of 50. It wouldn't be connected to the first Yovel. So this is a big shaila in general. Now we don't know where Yovel is anymore. So if you would hold that year 50 is a standalone year, it's not year 1 of the next cycle, us not knowing when Yovel is would mess up our count of which year Shemitah is. Because every 7 Shemitahs, there's an extra year that's not part of the cycle. We actually hold, but we hold that the 50th year is actually year 1 of the next cycle. So therefore, we can continue our 49-year cycle and we don't lose the cheshbon of when Shemitah is. If you held that Yovel was a standalone year, then we would not even know today when Shemitah is. Because if you don't know when Yovel is, you won't know when Shemitah is because it throws it off. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara tells us. Tashma, it's not the Tanya we learned.
1 minute. So that she holds it's really a 49-year cycle, not a 50-year cycle.
Correct.
That's how we paskin?
Oh, well, otherwise we would have no idea when Shemitah is these days.
What do you mean? Why not?
Because if it's a 50-year cycle, we count every 7th-year Shemitah. We would have to know when.
Every 7 years, but after 49 years, so
50, the 50th year, the Yovel year is year 1 for the next Shemitah cycle. But if the year 50 was not year 1 for the next Shemitah cycle, well, now there's an extra year inserted here, which would throw off the whole cheshbon of the Shemitah.
So if it's year 1, Yovel is year 1, so you only have 5 years of till the next
when you can plant and eat.
Yeah. Right.
So that's not going to stem because the pasuk says 6 years.
Right.
That's the Gemara's kasha. Gewaltig. I can see this is not your first time. Gewaltig. Tashma, the Tanya we learned.
It's like my first time.
No, you have the same enthusiasm as the first time. Gewaltig. Tashma, the Tanya we learned. Kluktu de Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan. Here's the machlokes. It says v'kidashtem eshnas hachamishim shana. You have to make holy the 50th year, and the Rabbanan say shnas hachamishim atamoina. You count the 5th year. The atamoina shnas hachamishim v'achas. Don't count it as year 50 and as year 1. Don't give it a dual purpose as year 50 and as year 1. Mikan amru. From here you see that Yovel eina oila leminyan shavua. After year 50, you need to count a separate year for year 1. So the sheet of the Rabbanan is that Yovel is a 50-year cycle, and therefore the Yovel year is not counted as year 1 for the next Shemitah cycle. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yovel oila leminyan shavua. The Yovel year is also year number 1. So the Gemara asks exactly what David asks. Amar loy Rabbi Yehuda, Harayu Omer sheish shanim tizra sadecha. This cycle is supposed to mean that for 6 years you could plant. But if you're gonna add Yovel as one of the 7 years, kum techois, on that cycle, you'll only able to be planting 5 years. Ven kan alachamesh, because you lost Yovel, which is year 1, and you're gonna lose Shemitah, which is year 7. You only have 2 through 6, which is only 5 years. Amar lahem. So Rabbi Yehuda told them back, according to you, that after the 50th year you count year 1, you're also going to have a problem. Why? Because there's another pasuk that says, Harehu Omer v'asas es atfua l'shalosh hashon. That the tfua that you're going to grow in the year before the Shemitah is going to have to last for 3 years. For the year before the Shemitah, it's going to have to provide. It's going to have to provide for the Shemitah year. And it's also going to have to provide for the post-Shemitah year up until those new crops are ready to be harvested. But if you're going to have Shemitah and the Yovel back to back, then I reckon Arba. So this pasuk is not accurate because the produce that were produced the year before the Shemitah, which was year 49, will have to last you for year 48. Will have to last you for year 49, which is Shemitah. It's going to have to last you for year 50, which is Yovel, and year 1 of the new cycle until the new produce is ready. So that doesn't stem either. Ella, what are you going to have to say? You're going to have to say that the pasuk says that your pairs will last for 3 years. That's not referring to the cycle right before the Yovel. It's referring to a regular Shemitah cycle. Well, you know what? So when you talk about having 6 years to plant, I can also say that's referring to a normal Shemitah cycle. It's not referring to the Shemitah cycle that included the Yovel. By the other years of the cycle, where in fact there are a full 6 years to be able to work your field. Let's see the round. The Yovel will not act as year 50 and additionally as year 1. The Yovel year isn't counted as one of the 7 years in the Shemitah cycle. It'll be counted as year 50 for the last cycle. And you'll also count it as year 1. That doesn't work that way. Rather, it's there's a year added, which is the Rabbanan. So the Gemara asked, if you learn like Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to have a problem because we're going to have 2 years in a row that you cannot plant. And then that first Shemitah cycle is not going to have 6 years where you could plant. It's only going to have 5 years that you could plant. And mashma de la olam, from the pasuk, it's mashma that every single Shemitah cycle has with it 6 years prior where you could plant. But the way you, Rabbi Yehuda, are learning the Shemitah, that's the first Shemitah of the new cycle after Yovel, there would have only been 5 years where you could plant. Year 1, which is the Yovel year, it's also to plant. And when you count 6 years, if you count 6 years after the Yovel, then that 6 years could be Snasha Shemitah. So it comes out you only had 5 years where you were able to plant. So Rabbi Yehuda shot back. You want to tell me that when it says Shei Shonim, it has to mean every single Shemitah cycle? Well, you're going to have a problem elsewhere. It says that the tefillah that you prepared the year before the Shemitah will last you for 3 years. The Shemitah year of year 49, there your tefillah lasting 3 years won't be enough. You'll need 4 years. The produce that you planted in year 48, it has to sustain you for the year in which you planted it. Which would be the Shemitah year, and you're not allowed to plant. Followed by Nun, which is the Yovel year, and then Nun Aleph, even though you can plant then until you're ready to harvest, you need some food. And that's going to be 4 years. Ella, what are you forced to say? The pasuk that says that the tefillah will last 3 years is not referring to a Shemitah that's followed by a Yovel. It's referring to one of the other Shemitahs in the cycle that didn't have a Yovel afterwards. And in the normal Shemitah year, 3 years will be enough. In a normal year, the produce that was planted and grown and harvested in the 6th year will sustain you for the 6th year, the 7th year, and the 8th year until your new produce is ready. So therefore I can touch as well, that you're asking me from. Beautiful. So the Gemara with this seems to fan for the Shaila, that when you say until Yovel, it depends on how you hold. If you hold Yovel is year 49, well then it's connected to the earlier side. If you hold Yovel is year 50, but it also counts as year 1 for the next Shemitah cycle, which is what Rabbi Yehuda holds. Well, then, if you said at Yovel, you wouldn't include the next Yovel, because the next Yovel is already year one of the next Shemitah cycle. But if you hold that after the 50th year, after Yovel, then you start counting one again, like the Rabbanon. So then in the nether, if you said at Yovel, that Yovel year would be the 50th year of the prior cycle. So that would determine whether how your nether is explained. So if you said at Yovel, it's a machlokes if the 50th year is connected to the earlier 49 years, or if it's connected to the next 49 years. The Mishnah says Ada Pesach. If someone said Ada Pesach, it's also until Pesach. Now let's go look at this Mishnah. Because the Mishnah shared with us three different ways of saying Ada Pesach. If he said Ada Pesach up until Pesach, then we say it's also until Pesach arrives. If you say Ad Sheyehei Pesach, until Pesach should be, then it means until Pesach is finished, it means Ad Sheyetze. What if you said Ad Pnei Pesach? Until the beginning of Pesach, or it doesn't mean beginning, until the face of Pesach. So that means, does that mean before or after? So we're going to see in a minute that what it means is there has to be some minutes in Pesach that are post my nether. The question is, at what point do I want my nether to terminate? So Rav Meir Eimer Osir Ad Sheyagia. Rav Meir holds that he means to say until the first moment of Pesach arrives, that's where I want my nether. The moment of Pesach arrives, I don't want my nether anymore. But the Yosy Eimer Osir Ad Sheyetze, I mean, I want to include all of Pesach. So the Gemara is going to drill down into understanding this machlokes. So Zok the Gemara, remember this much be telling us when someone says Ad Pnei Pesach, what it means is the Svirle. So I'm in the last line that's the intermediate with Ad Pnei Pesach. Rav Meir Omer Osher Ad Sheyagia. The Svirle Rav Meir holds the Nehide Ikal Meimer. The Ad Pnei Pesach could mean Ad Rega Echad Shelefnei Soif Yoim Achron Shel Pesach Kamar. Ad Pnei Pesach could mean up until a moment in Pesach. Well, if I said up until a moment in the Yom Tov of Pesach, the Yom Tov of Pesach is comprised of many, many moments. Do I mean up until the last moment of Pesach? Or do I mean up until the first moment of Pesach? Or do I mean one of the moments in between? Reb Meir says a person never says something to put himself into a suffix situation. And when he said Pnei, it's confusing before which minute of Pesach, before the first moment or the last moment. But since whenever someone says something, he doesn't want to put himself into a suffix. He doesn't want to say something that's going to render him in a situation of suffix throughout the Yom Tov. And therefore, he must have meant before the first moment of Pesach. Why? Because he doesn't want to say anything that's going to be confusing. So therefore, he doesn't even want to get into that gray area. So his intention is to stay out of the gray area, which means his nether will only be until Pesach. Rabbi Yosy also, a person will say something that will get him into a gray area, and now it's unclear exactly which moment of Pesach he wants his nether to expire, and therefore, l'chumra, he has to keep the nether until the end of Pesach. So Zok to Gemara, remember that it's Reb Meir who holds Reb Meir holds a person who wouldn't get into such territory. Rabbi Yosy Savar Ma'ayel Inish Nashal Sveika, and Rabbi Yosy is the one who holds that a person is not concerned and he would put himself into a suffix. I'm going to illustrate to you that it's exactly the opposite. Rabbi Mishieshloi Shtei Kite Banois Mishtei Nashim. Now this is a very confusing situation. Someone had two wives, and from each of his two wives, he had two daughters, an older daughter and a younger daughter. So let's call wife A and wife B. So there's B1 and B2, which is the older daughter and the younger daughter from wife B, and there's A1 and A2, who's the older daughter and the younger daughter of wife A. The Amar, and this genius of a father said, Kidashti as biti hagedoila. I want you to know I accepted kedushin for my older daughter. But older daughter could mean so many different things. Because ve'ena yodea, I don't remember, he says, he's a goyim plus. I accepted kedushin for my older daughter, but I don't remember what I mean. Is it gedoila shebigdoilos? Did I mean the oldest of the oldest girls? So that means you look at all these four girls, and whoever is the oldest of them, that's the one he was Makabal Kedushin for. Or maybe it means Im Gedoyle Shebektanos. Maybe you take A2 and B2, and you take the older of those two girls, right? The older of the second daughter that was born from each marriage. Or maybe it meant, maybe the Im Ketana Shebekdoylos. Maybe what I meant when I said Gedoylos, I meant I look at A1 and B1, and I take the younger one of these two older ones. So when I meant I was Makabal Kedushin from an older daughter, I meant from either A1 or B1, and I mean the younger one. She Gedoyla Mina Gedoyla Shebektanos. Why am I referring to the B1 as a Gedoyla if she's younger than A1? It's because she's older than A2 and B2. So since what he meant could be so many different things, Kula Nasuros. L'chumra, we have to say that they're all usher. So what he did was, he was Makabal Kedushin for the Gedoyla. But he didn't specify her name, Rivki, Miriam, Shani, Liba. She didn't say anything. He just said the oldest. We don't know what that word means. And therefore, since he did something so stupid, so confusing, they're all going to be usher. Divrei Meir. Chutz min aktana shebektanos. The only daughter that for sure he didn't mean is the younger one of either A2 or B2. Because there's no way to refer to such a girl as a Gedoyla. But Rabbi Yosy Omer, Kulon mutaros chutz min hagedoyla shebekdoylos. The only girl who could possibly be the one who he was Mekadesh was the oldest of the oldest. So you see clearly that the Meir holds a person puts himself into a suffix. When he said Gedoylos, he allows it to be able to translate it as any possible way to use the word Gedoyla. That's going into a big suffix. Rabbi Yosy, on the other hand, says no. A person will not go into a suffix. So if he said Gedoyla, he only means the one girl that's unique that can be called Gedoyla because she's the oldest of the oldest. So in our sugya, Reb Meir seems to be the one who says a person doesn't enter into a suffix. But in this brayso, it seems that Reb Meir does enter into a suffix. Amar Rav Chanina bar Abdimai, Amar Rav Muchlefes Hashita. I believe that we need to swap this around. I believe the Rishonim say that it's this Mishnah you got to swap around. So really, Reb Meir holds that a person does not enter into a suffix. And we have to swap it around here, where Reb Meir holds it only means Gedoylos Shebekdoylos. I think the Ran specifically addresses that. The Ran for the Gemara here on Amud Beis is actually on Amud Aleph. So the Ran says Mechlefes Hashita kan hechlip shitas. Here they changed. So I might be wrong. Kan might mean here in the Nedarim. Here in the Nedarim, really Reb Meir is Makmer and not Mekel. That's what I'll assume. Kan probably means here in the Nedarim. So I was mistaken when I touched it. Kan hechlip shitas here in the Nedarim. It confused it. So really, Reb Meir is the one who would hold that with such a nether, you're usher until the end of Pesach, and it's Rabbi Yosy who says the nether will only go until Pesach. V'atanya, and I'll prove to you, in fact, that that's the case, because it says Ze'aklal, Kol shezmanai kavua. Anytime there's something that's zmanai kavua, like we always know when Shabbos is, we always know when Pesach is. The Omer ad Pnei, and he used this lashon. Reb Meir Omer Achiyetze. Reb Meir says it goes until the end. Reb Yosy Machiyagia. So you have a brisa that's very specifically saying that Reb Meir holds a person does enter into a suffix because he says Achiyetze. So in fact, that's the real lach of Reb Meir, and our sugya, our Mishnah is a mistaken, and our Mishnah swapped by mistake Reb Meir with Reb Yosy. This is really Reb Meir who holds a person enters into a suffix. Now this comes out very relevant. So let's have a look at the Ran. V'atanya b'nichusa, that it's Reb Meir who holds someone enters a suffix. So it's very interesting that the Brayso says anything that's zmanai kavua, that's when Reb Meir holds a person enters into a suffix. But if it's ein zmanai kavua, then it's going to be a little different. So let me go back to the Ran where it says Ze'aklal Kol shezmanai kavua, which is 4 lines down in the widest lines. And the Ran says, Kloimer, if you have something where you know exactly how long this gray area period will be, even though a mayor holds a person will enter himself into a suffix, but that's not if the suffix could last forever. It's only if he knows there's a maximum of 7 or 8 days involved, then a person would enter into a suffix, and therefore we're machmer to say that you have to keep your nether for the whole Pesach. So in Pesach, shekava b'Torah shivas yomim. So even if I'm entering into a suffix, I'm still mitigating and minimizing my potential for Isser because it's limited by the 7-day period. There, when you say the Achiyeh, it means it's Asr until Yom Tov is over. The Kivin the Yada, Zman Hemshech Yisurai, he knows how long it's going to last. It's not unknown, it's not open-ended. Therefore, Oiser Atzmagoy. But if it's Ein Zman HaKavua, B'chol She'ein Zman HaKavua, Kagoyin Kitzir. What if I said I'll be Asr until the end of the cutting season? There's not a hard, fast date. That's flexible. So therefore, Ubatir, or harvesting grapes, She'ein Lem Zman Kavua, She'im Shachim Oiser Zman V'lo Yoiser. There's no cutoff time where after this date, there's no more Ketzira, there's no more Betzira. So there, I definitely don't want to enter into that territory because it's open-ended as to how long my nether will be. I'll only enter into such a scenario where there's a fixed end date. Nobody's going to put an Isra on himself when he knows that there's no end to it. There's a possibility that there's no end to it. If there's a fixed end date, only then would a person mean to extend himself to the end of that date. So let's see the halacha. Now that we flip the shittas around, and Reb Meir's machmer, and Reb Yosy's mekel, and the kaim along Reb Meir, Reb Yosy, halachic Reb Yosy, and we know that there's a rule that whenever Reb Meir and Reb Yosy argue, we pass like Reb Yosy. Now we could be mekel. By flipping this around, now Rabbi Yossi is the mekel, and we pass like Rabbi Yossi, so we benefit from that kula. Okay, that's a different story. So we'll stop here. The Ram brings down that in the Gemara in Kedushin, the Gemara asked this same stira, and the Gemara has a different teretz, and the Gemara maintains that Rabbi Yossi is the machmer. So for the Ram, here we come out that Rabbi Yossi is the mekel, we pass like sugya with the same kasha. They came out with a different teretz. And we paskin, and over there Rabbi Yossi is the machmer. So maybe we should paskin like that sugya. We paskin like Rabbi Yossi regardless. But let's say we should paskin like that sugya where Rabbi Yossi is the machmer. Why do we paskin like our sugya where Rabbi Yossi is mekel? Let's paskin like the other sugya that concludes that Rabbi Yossi is the machmer. Zokt around a very important rule. Whenever you have a contradiction between two sugyas, always follow the sugya that's talking about the subject matter. We're discussing the halacha of Nedarim. In our sugya, the Gemara concludes that Rabbi Yossi is the mekel and we pass him like Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara in Kedushin also discusses this Nedarim question and concludes differently. If you're looking to know what the halacha is by Nedarim, give more weight to what you find in Maseches Nedarim than what you find in Maseches Kedushin, because it's logical to assume that will be more accurate in the halacha l'maisa when we're actually discussing that particular inyan. So that was the chiddush of the Ram, a very nice chiddush. Let me see if I can find those words themselves, because it's a good point. I'm going to look over here at the third line of the Ram. Afilu hachi, given the hach sugya, itmur of a sugya in Nedarim, since this sugya is discussed in our Masech Nedarim, mashma the ikala misla chiluya tfei me'ahi sugya d'hasam the lav b'duchtei itmar. You always give the Gemara a home team advantage. If we're discussing Hilchos Nedarim, follow the conclusion of the sugya in Maseches Nedarim. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Masnitzin, Arak Tzir. So this is a little bit open-ended until the harvesting season. Arabotzer. Botzer is referring to cutting grapes. Aramasik, I believe, is referring to harvesting olives. Einoi Aser Ella Ad Sheyagia. The Isser nether will end as soon as the harvesting season begins. Zaklal. This is the rule. Kol shezmanai kavua. If there's a fixed time, we amar Ad Sheyagia, and he said it should be usher until that fixed time arrives. Usher Ad Sheyagia, and it's usher until that time arrives. If he said Ad Sheyagia, which Pesach meant till the end of Pesach, Osir at Sheyetze, then it's Osir until the end of Pesach. But the Choz Mach in a Kavua. But if it's something where the end is not Kavua, like a harvesting season, there's no fixed end date, Some people harvest longer, some people harvest earlier. So therefore, Bein Amar Achi Bein Amar Achi Yegia, Eini Aser Achi Yegia. No one will ever put him up to a position where he has no control over when the end of the nether will be, and it's open-ended. So therefore, he only will be up until the season starts. What if someone said Arakites? And Kites, Rashi says, is the time of gathering figs. Kites is the word used to gather figs. The Korele kites, why is it called kites? The custom was to pick the figs off the tree without a knife. They just picked it off. So the Mishnah says, if you said Arakites or Achiyakites, then the rule is Achiyaschilu ha'om lahachnis bikol kolos. It's until the people start taking their baskets and gathering the figs. Let's see the round. It always means at the beginning. So regardless, he means to terminate his nether when the season begins. He's not going to continue the nether. It is not clear. So what is the beginning of the season? The beginning of the season is when people start taking baskets and gathering in figs. What if he said Achiyavar HaKayitz until it's over? So he's very specific. Then it's Achiyakpilu HaMekzoyos. What does Yakpilu HaMekzoyos means? The Ran tells us it means Hasakinim Shem Yuchodim Lach Toichata'enim Kishoisim Enigulim Nikron Mekzoyos. Let's stop a second. When they actually pull the fig off the tree, they don't use any type of knife. But at the end of the season, what do they do with these figs? They often press them into a fig cake. For that, they used a knife to cut up these figs. So, Achiyavar Kites, if I say until the end of the processing of the fig season, it means until people put their knives away, the knives with which they used to cut the figs to press them into these miktoyos. The Kari Kra L'Sakine miktoyos, you find that the pasuk uses the word miktoyos to describe a knife. And now the Ram takes it a step further, which will be very relevant, that since they would make these pressed fig cakes with knives, they started referring to their fig cakes themselves as mikzoyos. People started referring to the actual figs that were prepared with the knives, they actually called them knives. Zok the Mishnah, Zok the Gemara. Tana we learned, Kalkala Sha'amru, the basket that we're talking about, it's kalkala shel ta'enim, v'loy kalkala shel anavim. It means the baskets of figs and not the baskets of grapes. What does that mean, Dr. Ram? Shalavishay niktzatzois biyad likitas and kriyakayis. That we said already. But loy kalkala shel anavim mishum doloy mekatasim biyada ela al yidei sakin. Ahichaticha mikri. So therefore, when you say arakayits, you're only referring to figs. You're not referring to grapes. So if you see people gathering grapes, your nether didn't expire yet. Your nether only expires once they're carrying in baskets the figs. And why can kites not refer to an oven? Because kites has a connotation that you're tearing it off the tree by hand. You're not using a knife to cut it. And grapes, you always use a knife to cut off the clusters. Tanya, we learned. If someone said, I'm not going to have a no from pairs of kites, kites always refers to figs only. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Anovim Bechlal Teinim. Even grapes will be usher to eat. They're also referred to as kites. My time at the Tanakama. Why do the Tanakama say that kites do not include grapes? Because over Teinim mixed some biyada. Teinim figs you could just pull off the tree with your hand. But Anovim loy mixed some biyada. You can't cut grapes by hand. You need some type of knife. However, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Sover, Anovim Nami Kimir Didon mixed some biyada. And the Ran says when they dry up, when the stems try to get very dry and brittle, you'll be able to cut them and snap them off. Therefore, kites would also include grapes. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll actually be on tomorrow. David, were you able to get rescheduled or you're open-ended?
I just noticed that they rescheduled. I thought it was 2 today. I just noticed it's 2 on Tuesday.
On Tuesday. So you're literally in a nether for Chol She'ein Zmanoi Kavua.
Yeah. Hey.
You're stuck in New York, right?
Yeah,
So, but where are you?
I'm in Riverdale. When are
Okay,
you going
enjoy.
back? When are you going back, Chaim?
I came to shop for the customer, so it depends on my wife. It doesn't depend on me. But I have to be Tuesday morning at Kaiser. So hopefully by Tuesday 9 o'clock I'll be in Toronto.
Chaim, if you're shopping with your wife, it's also Ein Zman Nevuah.
Yeah. Nicht aus meinem Exwurst, und ab Sunday I'm back to also.
The border's closed.
Huh?
Some of the border's closed because of the snowstorm.
Okay, I left in Hanukkah. Big night
Yeah.
tonight.
Dacht het in Hanukkah.
Okay, call to bye.
Wel toe.
Kingston was also closed for a while. And we were monitoring it last night. Yeah.